Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Kiyan.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Because this week we watched Carnival of Monsters.
Which was written by Robert Holmes.
It was directed by Barry Letts.
And aired in January and February of 1973. It's also produced by Barry Letts.
Right.
Because he's the producer for this era.
Right, and we should mention that actually on screen he was only credited as director because the BBC, while they allowed him to, direct one serial per season, he couldn't be credited as both director and producer for that serial.
Right, they might have had some sort of policy where, each person can only be credited as one thing in the credits or something like that. Or there was a special case or something.
Might have just been in his contract, too.
Right.
As producer, that if he directed a serial, he couldn't be... Because, the director and the producer will get paid different amounts. So maybe it falls like, if you can't get paid for both, so if you're going to direct the serial, we're not going to credit you as producer type thing.
Right. Did he direct anything last season? I don't exactly remember.
To be honest, I actually don't remember either. But we have the magic of the internet to look it up, right? He directed Terror of the Autons was the last thing he directed, apparently.
And apparently he did on Inferno, which I don't remember, but...
Well, it's uncredited, apparently.
Okay.
And he did Enemy of the World, which...
Salamander,
Was he producer during Enemy of the World?
I don't think so.
I don't think he had taken over at that point yet. But yes, this serial is also written by Robert Holmes, who we have seen before because he wrote The Crotons, as well as he wrote another one.
And he's credited with creating the Third Doctor and Joe.
Right, because he wrote Spearhead in Space.
Yeah.
Spearhead from Space. And he
Even
also...
though Joe's not in that, but he's still credited with creating her.
Well, I think he definitely wrote a story that season, too. He might have written Terror of the Autons, actually.
He's written stuff.
Yeah, and he'll also go on to become script editor later. I don't remember exactly if he takes over after Terrence Dicks leaves, but he does become script editor. So he's one of those major players in the world of classic who, like Terrence Dicks and Verity Lambert, and later we'll get, Philip Hinchcliffe. But anyway.
The episode starts, episode 1, I'll just say right off the bat, kind of made me think this would be, sort of a lighthearted and just silly serial, and it somewhat was, but not as much as episode 1 telegraphed it to be.
There was a lot of pretty deep, kind of dark themes that were played out through episodes 2 through 4.
Yeah, 3, I'd say, is where it picked up with that.
Yeah. Well, it begins on another planet with these weird blue creatures.
Right, I don't think we ever got a name for these guys. They're individually named, but as a species, I don't think we ever got a name for them, or we just missed it somehow. Yeah. They look like, they're humanoid, and they have I don't know what it's called, but the top when the top of your head is bald and you have the sort of side.
The Benjamin Franklin,
I guess. They have that, and they're all blue. And at first, I thought it was just a shoddily done makeup, but their lips are normal lip color, and their eyes are also not as made up. So the skin around their eyes looks like regular human skin. I guess that was intentional because it was on all of them. I just thought it was shoddily done makeup at first.
Yeah, so did I. But anyway, these other beings show up who look like humans, but they're not.
We also didn't mention, and this doesn't even come into play very much at all, but the subordinate race.
Oh yeah,
they looked kind of like the blue guys, but just less human.
Human, yeah.
They're not really important except one of them gets injured, and they're sort of just workers, I guess, for the blue guys. Right. I guess we're just calling them the blue guys. The Blue Man Group. Honestly, they reminded me, and I don't know why, but of the Wickersham brothers from Horton Hears a Who, like in the old cartoon, where they sing that song like he's going to be roped, he's going to be caged. Have you seen that?
No, but I've seen the Wickersham Brothers in Seussical. Does that count?
Yeah, the blue monkey guys, right?
Yeah.
These guys are not like them at all, but they reminded me of them for some reason.
So these two other weird beings, humanoid beings, show up, and their race has an actual name. I don't remember what it was at this moment. But the characters were Vorg
and
Shurna. And they have on the most garish eyesore outfits in the show so far.
They're carnies.
Yeah, but I mean, could that have been any more obvious?
Questionably, possibly, maybe. I don't even want to describe these outfits. Just because they're.
I mean, this is what I've used for the Sixth Doctor's outfit. But I'm going to use it again. It's like a rainbow threw up in the costume department, and they were just like, "Here you go." I mean, Void looks like he had some sensibilities for a while. He's got a black suit, but then it's got all these colored circles on it. You know,
he's wearing a transparent bowler hat with not sequins, but just plastic baubles on it.
Yeah,
it's like those. You're not going to know what I'm talking about because you didn't know what I was talking about when I mentioned it in the other episode. But those candy things on the pieces of paper, the little candy hemisphere things, they're tiny. You don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
No one probably knows what I'm talking about, but yeah, Shurna looked equally ridiculous
in her one-piece bathing suit that was two different colors, and her little moons orbiting her.
Looked like she had multiple antennae, I guess, if that's the right word.
Conveniently for us not having to see that costume anymore, it cuts to the Doctor and the TARDIS, and they've materialized, supposedly, according to the Doctor, on Metabelus 3.
Yeah, Joe questions this because they look like they're in a cargo hold. And she says, "Are you sure we're not on Earth, Doctor?" And he's like, nonsense. He keeps denying the fact that they could possibly be on Earth. Meanwhile, one of the crates, Joe points out, says Singapore. And I noticed before Joe started pointing out that they're on Earth, I noticed that one of the crates said Bombay, so I was like, wow, they couldn't have even been bothered to turn that crate around. But no, it was all part of it, so good on them.
And, well, I mean, before we continue, this is a good place to mention that the Doctor's wearing a different colored coat.
Yeah, if we're talking about costumes, he's wearing, what is it, green?
It is green now, which the fourth different colored coat he's worn, because he had the black one for his first season.
Black.
And then he's worn red consistently since then, but there was the blue one in the Sea Devils.
Yeah.
And then this is the green one. So this is his fourth unique coat. I mean, he's had multiple costumes because he changes the cape sometimes. But in terms of the coat itself, this is green. And also, I actually noticed that he's not wearing a white shirt with this green coat. He's wearing a slightly green-tinted shirt.
I didn't notice that.
The only time you could really notice it is in the scene where he's taking his coat off in the one cabin. You could see the shirt was tinted green and wasn't white, which I also think is interesting because this is probably the first time he's changed the shirt itself.
He hasn't changed shirts in years. Well, I mean, no.
Design-wise.
Yeah, if we're talking about costumes, might as well talk about Joe's. She's actually wearing something that doesn't look dumb for once. Actually looks like something a normal person would wear.
Right. Of course, Joe and her costumes. She loves her costumes. But
yeah, they're in this cargo hold, and the Doctor's still not convinced that they're on Earth, even after Joe has pointed out there's some chickens.
Right. You know, the Doctor's like, oh, well, maybe they have chickens on Metabelus 3.
I think he says these just look like chickens. They're obviously some alien species.
And they end up heading above deck and running into the Major Dalian. His daughter is Claire, and she clearly has some sort of fling with the first officer. I think it was the first officer.
Yeah, some uniformed dude. But yeah, the three people on the ship, the Doctor and Joe actually sort of eavesdrop first, and I think they find out that they're somewhere in the Indian Ocean on a ship headed to Bombay.
Right.
In 1926, and Joe is like, "I told you, Doctor." And then they're discovered, and they think they're stowaways, which is a reasonable assumption because they pretty much are.
Yeah.
So they get locked up. I think they try and run away first.
Before they get locked up, that dinosaur comes out of the ocean, and
Right, some sort of plesiosaur shows up randomly.
And that's when the Doctor knows that something is definitely wrong. I mean, beyond the fact that they're on a ship in the Indian Ocean in 1926. You know, the dinosaur raises out of the ocean, and then they get locked in the cabin, like you said. And in the cabin, the Doctor mentions that, you know, he asks Jo if she knows about the SS Bernice. Because...
Which she doesn't. Oh, before we get into that, just going back a minute or two, they find some sort of weird manhole cover looking thing. It's just a metallic hexagon on the ground, and they don't know what it is, but before they can figure out what it is, they get locked up.
Right. So...
And the SS Bernice is apparently, I don't know if it's real or not, because I wasn't bothered to look it up.
I actually tried to look it up, and I don't think it's real.
Okay. But apparently it was a ship that disappeared in the Indian Ocean.
And was apparently as famous as the Marie Celeste, which we know lost all its crew because the first Doctor materialized there, and then the Daleks followed him there, and all the crew members jumped overboard.
Was that the chase?
Yes, I think it was the chase. But then it cuts back to, you know, the Carnies, and they are talking with
these three, the three blue guys. There's three main...
The actual Blue Man Group.
No. The three blue dudes are Petar... well, there's Calic and there's Aurum, who are sort of in league with each other. Calic is the brother of the president of the planet Zarb, and we find out later that he wants to overthrow him. Right. And he and Aurum are kind of in league with this, or he kind of gets Aurum to follow him.
Right.
And the other guy is some sort of government official named
Pletrak,
right? I almost said Plutarch, but no, that's I don't actually know who Plutarch is. I just know the name.
Reference to something, but
I think he's some sort of Greek philosopher or something like that. But or politician.
But episode 1 ends when the Doctor's standing outside the TARDIS, and a giant hand comes in and takes the TARDIS. And you know, when I finished episode 1, I was really curious to see how they were going to link these two seemingly completely unrelated plot threads together.
Right, we didn't mention that the two Carney-looking people have this machine that they are trying to get the blue people to enjoy, but the blue guys just, they kind of go into this huddle, and they're like, amusement is illegal, what are we going to do? And, you know, they're very flustered. I didn't like the sort of, I don't want to say dichotomy, but I'm going to anyway, like I usually do. Dichotomy between the blue guys and Vorg and Shurna, because Vorg and Shurna's acting was a little questionable at times. Yeah, but I liked the alien looking blue guys. I liked their acting. It was
right. And we also didn't mention that I think it was either at the end of episode 1 or the beginning of episode 2 that when they reveal that their machine is basically this, it's called a miniscope, I think.
Yeah.
That has these little creatures in it, creatures, so to speak. And they show like a Cyberman and an Ogron.
Who knew the Ogrons would come back, you know?
Who knew the Cybermen were coming back? Pity they weren't the main villain. I'm kind of itching for a Cyberman story, to be honest.
It's been a while. It's been over...
the last time they showed up was the Invasion.
Yeah, so it's been three seasons now.
Yeah. You know, but anyway, so Cybermen is just kind of pinning out, and when they had their huddle, they were mentioning that bringing in illegal specimens, alien life that hasn't been approved, you know,
is punishable by death or something like that.
Right, yeah, something like that.
Because their main concern throughout this, to me at least before Calic starts going rogue, is they're concerned about disease, which is reasonable. I guess. Because they make multiple mentions how they're from a different galaxy than Earth, and well, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but
We always do.
and Shurna refer to Earth as Tellurians, and they're like, "What? Tellurians? That's in completely another section of the universe. We don't know what kind of diseases they could have," and they're really concerned about, sickness spreading, which they're heavy-handed about it, but it's a reasonable concern.
Yeah, I mean, it happened to the Native Americans.
Yeah, and that was the same planet.
Yeah.
So who knows what had happened here.
And then,
What if every race the Doctor's visited has just died off after he's left? God, that's dark.
That's a bit dark. Brushing that aside, it's revealed that the SS Bernice is actually inside the miniscope, so that resolves the question of how they're going to link those two plots.
Who would have thought? It's revealed right away in episode 2 also.
Right.
So I remember in episode 1 we were sort of discussing like, is the TARDIS actually, or is the entire ship actually inside the miniscope? And then, yeah, it is. Obvious or not, it was revealed right at the beginning of 2.
They bring out the TARDIS and it becomes big. the blue guys look at it and they're like, "Wait, what are you doing, Borg? What is this? It's getting bigger, Borg."
And one of them has this hilariously overacted line where he goes, "Why does it keep changing size?" Reminiscent of the guy in God, what was that Cyberman series? Wheel in Space, where he just overacts his death.
Well, okay, anyway, the Voig mentions that each of the little vignettes, so to speak, within the miniscope exists in their own separate area, so they can't, blunder into the other one. And
it's sort of a miniature zoo that you look in upon. They refer to the vignettes, like you said, as they had a special term for it. It started with a C, and I'm blanking on it now, but vignettes is fine.
So, yeah, it's revealed the ship is one of them, which the Doctor and Joe also independently find out when they kind of just wander out of the cabin they've been imprisoned in and stumble upon the exact same exchange between the Major and his daughter going on in the cabin that they had seen earlier.
Right, so the Doctor deduces that, they're the people on the ship are quote-unquote set on repeat, where they just repeat the same actions over and over and over, kind of like, the Matrix at the beginning. That's the only comparable thing I can think of. But Jo seems to catch on here, but based on her actions later, it doesn't seem like she exactly realizes.
Well, I think here she catches on that they're repeating themselves and something's definitely off, but I don't think she catches on that they're inside of a machine that's making them repeat everything.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I don't think she catches on that she can't explain to them what's going on.
Not for lack of trying. In episode 2, the Doctor and Jo return to that weird hexagonal thing on the floor that you had mentioned earlier, and the Doctor pulls out something.
Yeah, I forget its name, but it's not the sonic screwdriver for once. So
I made a silly note that it was a sonic hammer? ?
Either way, the Doctor, or I think actually Jo, she sort of just traces a line with this thing on the edge of the hexagon, and they remove it, and they stumble into the inner workings of the miniscope.
Right. And everything goes all terribly wrong now.
Right, lights start flashing on the miniscope, and Shurna is concerned. Vorg tries to play it off when the blue guys start to get suspicious. He says, "No, the miniscope is clearly working fine. It's just a
fault in the circuit."
Yeah, that's what they were called, circuits.
Right, yeah, circuits.
I like vignettes better, honestly.
I got a very Celestial toy maker vibe from the inside of the miniscope. Like an environment that you wouldn't normally see blown up to such a size, and then you have the Doctor and his companion running through it.
I can see that. I sort of, because the Celestial toy maker was sort of, games blown out of proportion here. Yes, it's like actual real life locations blown up with you in them. But yeah, the Doctor and Jo sort of stumble around in this mechanical looking corridor for a while, which is just the circuitry of the miniscope, I guess. And the doctor is caught on to what's going on, and he explains it to Joe a little bit. And they stumble into another one of the circuits or vignettes. Right. And it looks like they're just in a flowery field for a few seconds until another one of the plesiosaur things shows up.
So this one's different. This is called a drashig.
It was that's what it was in episode 1 too, right? It was one of the.
It was a plesiosaur. It was completely different, apparently, just according to the wiki.
It was actually a plesiosaur? I thought.
Yes, no, it was actually a plesiosaur.
Oh, I thought I was just making that up.
No.
Probably shouldn't have said that, but.
Hey, we make up this whole show. No, but yeah, this thing is called a drashig, which I just want to mention Robert Holmes named it a drashig because it's just an anagram of dish rag.
It just looks like a dinosaur with sort of antenna-like eye stalks.
Very snake-like dinosaur.
Yeah, we didn't see their actual entire bodies until 4, did we?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah, it sort of looked kind of creepy. It was sort of like hairy and scaly.
And that's where episode 2 ends, actually, when the drashig shows up and is like, roar! And then outside Borg is like, well, there's nothing we can do now. They're done for. The drashig will follow their scent.
Right, the drashigs are apparently creatures who just devour anything in their path. So there's no hope of escape for the Doctor and Joe. No point in watching episode 3. They just die right away.
Yeah, so we're actually just skipping straight to the Tom Baker era. We're just skipping to his first serial, and that's coming next week. So we'll see you all next week.
Until then, the end. No.
It has to be the 3rd time we've made that joke. But the show keeps reusing the same cliffhanger, and so will we.
Yeah, the Doctor and Joe sort of cower in fear, but the drashig just walks away.
Well, they explain it because the Doctor says that the drashig is following their scent because it must be blind. So it's following the scent of them coming out of the cave. Yeah. So it's following it back to the cave.
Yeah, I had a problem with this. It's either this one drashig was blind, or this doesn't make sense. Because why would the species evolve to have multiple eye stalks? I think I counted 4 eye stalks on the drashigs. Yet they don't do anything. I mean, maybe they were somehow olfactory receptors? I don't know. I'm obviously just trying to justify this for myself.
Honestly, I think there's no justification. You could explain it away maybe because they're in the miniscope and it's not their natural environment.
Oh god.
Maybe their olfact, maybe their ears, maybe they're just for show, maybe they're not even eyes. You could justify this a million ways and you would never really satisfy yourself.
Oh well. The show has done more questionable things in the past, so just brush it aside.
Well, I don't think it detracts from this serial. I still think this is a pretty good serial.
Yeah, it doesn't detract from the serial. It's just an interesting thing to go, about while you're watching it.
Hartnell shows up again. The Doctor and Joe run back through the cave that they came out of, which actually is connected to the circuit, and they sit down, and this is where it starts to kind of take kind of a dark twist, because the Doctor's trying to explain to Joe what the miniscope is like, and he explains
dark per se, just
not dark, but it doesn't get serious.
It's something I didn't think they would bring up based on how lighthearted it had been up until then, and how ridiculous these costumes were. But yeah, the Doctor brings something up here. Go ahead.
Should I explain it? Well, he basically just talks about how the miniscope is like a zoo, and I mean, at first Joe doesn't really see what's going on because she doesn't understand the concept of the miniscope yet. But, as the Doctor's explaining it, he's like, they're just keeping these people here like animals. Like, they're sentient beings, civilized beings in this, and they're just keeping them like animals under their control. And, Joe's like, well, what's so... You're like, that's terrible. And he's like, well, you go to zoos, don't you?
Yep.
And she's like, oh.
And, but she says, well, that's a little different. The creatures being kept here are sentient. Like the humans. So far, she's only seen the humans, but obviously we know there's Cybermen and Ogrons in there. And the Doctor says, well, to the beings outside the machine, we're like zoo animals. We're yeah. But the doctor, actually, we find out later, is kind of disgusted with it too.
Yeah.
He doesn't really let it show here, but he is.
Yeah. Well, he does also mention that, I guess this happens a little bit later, that he was the one who actually pushed the Time Lords to ban miniscopes.
Oh, he mentions it now, actually.
Yeah, so he mentions when he was back on Gallifrey before he like noped out with TARDIS and Susan, that he was the one who kind of pushed the Time Lords to ban miniscopes. So he's also obviously outraged that one still exists.
And this was another thing that I found weird. The Time Lords just have the right to outlaw things on multiple planets, I guess. I mean,
maybe it was because the Time Lords have some OP military force, and they're like, if you don't ban this, we're going to declare war on you or something. I'm not sure. I don't know.
It's not really pertinent to the serial. Just another thing that I thought could have done. They could have done a better job with. But.
Well, I think it's just kind of supposed to imply that the Time Lords are a lot more powerful than we've seen on screen.
Yeah, well, based on how much we've seen them on screen so far, which is last serial briefly, and then just once before
there was the War Games.
In the War Games.
And then there was the random Time Lord who showed up in Terror of the Autons who was like, yo, Doctor, the monster's here. Okay, bye.
Yeah, so they haven't really had much chance for characterization and the recurring characters on the show haven't had much chance to talk about them without it seeming just random and out of place.
Right.
Though they have just as sort of the serial or openers in episode 1 where the characters are sometimes talking about random things. They might mention the Time Lords here or there, and obviously when the dematerialization circuit came back last week, which is obviously how they got into this mess in the first place.
Right. But so the Doctor and Jo are running through the miniscope corridors now because turns out the Drashigs can just bust through the wall into the actual circuitry of the machine.
I thought it was because the Doctor and Jo messed with it. They opened the door from the ship and the cave.
Yeah, conceivably, yes. But yeah, they bust out, follow the Doctor and Jo-ish. They get distracted along the way, I guess. Or they're a bit slow, but the Doctor and Jo find kind of a like a cliff face, but it's not really a cliff face because inside it's circuitry.
It's a shaft.
Yeah.
A long shaft, and the Doctor drops a coin down the shaft, and it takes 10 or 15 seconds to hit bottom.
Right.
So there's no jumping down that. Oh, meanwhile, outside the machine, the blue guys want to deport Vorg and Shurna, much to their dismay, because they're out of Republic credits. No, they're out of credit bars. And all they have to their name is this machine. And meanwhile, Calic is enacting his plan to overthrow Zarb, the president of the planet that we mentioned before, and who we never see.
Right.
He's going to just plot device president who needs to be overthrown.
Mysterious background shadow figure thing.
Who Calic is actually opposed to him because he's being more lenient, and I think Calic uses the term liberal, more than previous presidents, and that's presumably how Vorg and Shurna were even able to enter the planet in the first place.
Right. But back to the Doctor and Jo. The Doctor gives Jo some silly discussion on thinking sideways.
Yeah, lateral thinking, I think he calls it. Where if you can't approach the problem head on or from behind, you have to approach it from the side, and Jo just she takes it literally.
Well, it works because she's like, oh, so hey, the ship's right here. We can just cut to the left into the ship and get the rope from the ship and use it to go down the shaft, Doctor. And he's like, well, that's not really what I meant, Jo, but sure, that'll work.
So they head back to the ship. And they immediately get captured.
Well, Jo gets captured.
Does, because they get back into the cargo bay, holding bay thing, and I guess it was just a case of severe bad luck, but the admiral dude and the... I don't even know his name. Not captain.
The first mate person who was going at it with Major's daughter?
Yeah. They show up. It's never exactly explained why, I guess. Like, maybe they just happen to be passing through. Either way, they show up and they find Jo. Her boot is sticking out from out of the crate. And, good going, Jo. Yet again. That's all I'm going to say.
That's not her fault. You can't blame her for her boot sticking out.
She could have concealed herself a little better.
She didn't even know her boot was sticking out.
They're trying to hide, kind of make sure her entire body is hidden, and doesn't have an obvious black shoe sticking out of the...
Well, anyway, she just goes and she's like, "Doctor, stay here." And she just goes with the people, and the doctor takes the rope and escapes.
She's a little sarcastic about it. They say, "Come here, no, we're gonna lock you up and question you." She's like, "I know." It's already happened twice. I don't think we actually mentioned it, but the first time the Doctor and Jo do get caught twice.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So this is what I was talking about before when I said that Jo, I think, it didn't actually get that she couldn't convince the people on the ship that they were stuck in a loop, because she tries to tell them and they don't really get it. And a few minutes later, she gets locked up again. Again, she uses her skeleton key to get out. I don't think we've actually mentioned it before, but she has a skeleton key. She gets captured again, and she tries to explain it again. And of course, they don't know. So, I don't know.
Well, she almost gets through to them.
Yeah, there was that scene with the Major's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You think she's going to have some sort of breakthrough, but she doesn't. And I guess this is a good time to say, because this happens now and later when the Major's daughter is talking to the Major himself in his bedroom at the end of the serial. And it happens now too when Jo questions her about, haven't you seen this all before? This actress delivers her lines incredibly slowly. Did you notice that?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit annoying. Just having to watch her face contort before she deliver the next line.
Right, and anyway, the Doctor takes the rope and he escapes out the miniscope, and he collapses immediately upon leaving, and episode 3 ends.
Right, with him, because if we didn't mention it before with the TARDIS getting removed, and when something's removed from the miniscope, it returns to its natural size, which comes into play later with the Drashigs.
Right. So behind the scenes, behind the scenes in the context of the serial, the two blue guys,
Calic and Oram,
are trying to overthrow the president. So their plan is to, 1, disable the Eradicator device thing that they use to destroy things, and then 2...
some sort of beam cannon, and like a mounted turret thing.
Yeah. 2 is to, let out the Drashigs, let it kill some people, and then, everyone will be in uproar about the president, and they'll get a new president. It'll be great.
Right, I think the plan was everyone would see how Zarb's more lenient immigration policies are bad, because they let these 2 people on planet and the Drashigs just destroy everything. So,
right.
So Calic, I guess, believes it would be an opportune time to come to power. And even Oram, I think, is a little bit hesitant to go along with this, but Calic says something along the lines of, "Yo, you're in too deep now, Oram. You kind of have to go along with me."
Right. So in episode 4, the Doctor returns to original size, and he argues for a bit with the blue guys because they're like, "We have to kill him. He's come out of the miniscope. We have to exterminate him." And obviously, they don't want him to find out the exterminator device thing, Eradicator, doesn't have power anymore. It's like, no, it's fine.
Because Oram tampered with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't want it to work against the Drashigs. I guess that's why they tampered with it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense, but...
Makes sense to me. So they let the Doctor live, and he talks to Vorg, and he's going to fix the machine. He's like, "I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix the Omega circuit." And I was like, wow.
It turns out Vorg doesn't actually know how to use the miniscope. And apparently he just won it on some gambling planet.
Yeah, it he wanted in that game of I know it has a name, but
Yeah,
when you
I don't know what it's called.
the Earth version of it would be you have 3 cups and you have a ball and you put the ball under one of the cups and you move them around and then you're like, hey, where's the ball? Obviously, it's not under the cup you want it under because either A, the person doing it has slipped the ball out of the cups in the process of moving them, so the ball's not actually under any of them, or he's changed the cup that the ball is in.
Yeah. Something you see in
The 3-shell something.
Yeah. Yeah, he's wanted in a game of that, and he doesn't know how to use it, and the doctor is pretty mad about this because he's using an illegal object or an illegal device that he doesn't even know how to control, so...
Right.
Shurna is understandably induced to eye rolls over this. I like that phrase, induced to eye rolls.
Okay. Okay. You just coined a new phrase.
That's never going to be used.
You don't know that.
Ever.
You don't know that. Anyway, the doctor is like, well, I gotta go back in. I gotta save Joe. But I'm glad you got my TARDIS. We'll just hook the machine up to the TARDIS. We'll do this insert technobabble here, and then it'll all be fine. And the what's his name? Petrak comes in.
Yeah, God, I can never remember his name.
He comes in and he's like, well, guys, looks like we're going to have to kill the doctor. And the doctor's like talking to him, and then he slips in the phrase, phase 1 to Vorg. So Vorg flips the phase 1 switch and the doctor disappears back into the machine, the meniscope.
Right. To go and try and rescue Joe and all the other people who are about to die because they're about to... It wasn't because they were going to vaporize the miniscope. It was for some other...
Because the miniscope was running out of power because I think when the Doctor and Joe had been running through the circuits and the Jashigs were following them, they had busted something in the power device.
Something or the other.
So it was like unlimited power. And they mentioned that the power device was designed by like eternity perpetual energy or something, and they went bankrupt because all of the power sources were designed to last forever.
Right, but yeah, it's about to run out of power, which is going to cause everything to die. Inside.
Right.
But the Drashigs are actually about to bust out of the machine. You see them sort of just banging on one of the panels on the machine, and while everyone's away, Vorg and Shurna try and make an escape, but Petrak sort of dissuades them from doing so. But while they're away, Kalik and Oram, Kalik kneels down and says... Oram makes the comment that, it looks like the Drashigs can't get out, and Kalik is like, well, we're just going to have to help them, aren't we?
Yeah, did you... Okay, this is probably a weird time to bring this up, but did you notice that the Kalik and Oram never spoke in, like, third or first person? They always used,
they
like...
used the royal we.
They used... Well, that, and they also did, like, one must consider that their plan might not work.
Yeah. I guess they were just supposed to be... I guess that's sort of a Victorian type of thing, where if you want to make someone sound snooty. I'm thinking of like Oscar Wilde type of stuff, or like one must always remain proper, and things like that. I think that's what they were going for. It was a little jarring though.
Right, but the miniscope's about to overheat, and of course. What's his name? Petrak had shot a gun at the Doctor as he dematerialized and had destroyed the phase 2 switch of the device he had built. So Vorg is sitting there trying to piece together what he can of how the device works so he can fix it before the miniscope dies.
Shurna isn't exactly helping. She's sort of just on the side making these sarcastic comments.
What more can she do? She's dressed in that awful outfit with her little satellite moons orbiting her hair.
Hey, don't pretend you don't want satellite moons orbiting your
I don't. This isn't Team Fortress 2.
Never played Team Fortress 2.
It's free to play.
See, that doesn't mean I'll ever play it. I don't play free things just because they're free. It's my rule. Don't do something just because it's free. Anyway, we're digressing.
Well, the Vorg gets it fixed, flips the switch, and everybody pops. They don't pop out, actually. because, as he's about to flip the switch, the Drashigs bust out and return to normal size, and of course...
Which is huge.
They eat Calic and Orm, apparently. I didn't realize this when I was watching it.
I didn't either. I looked on the wiki, actually, and apparently Calic and Orm get eaten. So there's that. I guess they got their just desserts.
Immediately right before that, conveniently, Shona had found an old laser power source from Vorg's military days.
Which apparently can be attached to the Eradicator, because that's what Vorg does, and he uses it to take down the Drashigs. It was pretty funny, honestly, seeing Vorg do this.
Anyway, and then he flips the switch, and apparently the Doctor and Joe pop out of the machine, but everybody else gets returned to their own time.
Convenient.
So the Cyberman goes back to wherever he comes from.
So does the Ogron.
The Ogron and,
whatever
whoever else is in the machine.
And the SS Bernice.
And the Bernice goes back, and there's a scene on the Bernice where the Major finally finishes the book that we've neglected to mention. He's been trying to read for this whole serial, but...
Poor Major.
Only gets a couple pages in. He makes a comment like, it was the longest book I've ever read.
And this is the scene I mentioned before where the Major's daughter takes forever to deliver her lines again.
Yeah, she almost has another moment where she figures it all out, but no, she doesn't. What a letdown.
Gave some nice little closure to the SS Bernice characters. Not that I would have minded if they just left it at that, because I didn't particularly care about these characters. They were kind of just jerks.
On the
honestly.
Bernice? Yeah, kind of. Anyway, outside, Vorg is now totally broke. The Miniscope is destroyed. He's got no energy bars because he spent his last energy bars getting to this planet in the middle of nowhere.
Planet that doesn't even recognize... amusement is apparently illegal based on that line in episode 1.
So he pulls out the old shell trick and basically starts earning credit bars off the plek track while the Doctor and Joe silently slip into the TARDIS and dematerialize. And it ends on the scene... Well, this image of it cuts to Shona and she looks over and sees the TARDIS dematerializing and then smiles and it ends.
I think that was sort of another eye-rolling smile. She's just like, what have I even gotten myself into?
And then hard cut to the credits.
Yeah, Neil Pletrak is really enthralled by the game, and he obviously hasn't encountered it before because he just keeps betting more and more and more. And Vorg says he's going to like it here. And I think Joe makes the comment before she and the Doctor leave that he'll be president by the time it's over.
Right. And that wraps up Carnival of Monsters, 4-episode serial that was good, but didn't really feel like much happened.
It didn't stand out at all to me. It's been a while, I think, since we've had just an agreeably and just flat-out mediocre serial. I wouldn't call it bad by any means, but I wouldn't call it good either. I would not rewatch this. I mean, if someone had a gun to my head and said, rewatch a Third Doctor serial, or rewatch a couple Third Doctor serials, this would not be one of them.
Well, it was a fun watch. It was a fun little romp through, the Miniscope with you've got the Bernice and the B plot of the blue men trying to overthrow their president.
Yeah, I liked the how it starts on the Bernice and you kind of try and figure out how these two things are interrelated, with the planet, the alien planet, and it's pretty obvious that they're just inside the machine, but it's a nice little mystery for maybe 10 minutes of episode 1. Apparently the serial was cut down from 6 to 4. So I assume they were going to do either more locations in the machine or more with the not backstory, but more with Calic trying to overthrow his brother.
Yeah.
Which was semi-interesting. It was something for the blue guys to talk about. I wasn't particularly enthralled by the political intrigues they were going through.
I mean, along with the fact that it didn't feel like a lot happened, it also actually felt kind of rushed. It all happened in kind of a whirlwind of things happening, and then it was done. obviously, because we're doing the summary, you look back on it and you're like, you can pick out 5 major moments, and then all the rest was just kind of, it's a blur because it wasn't really that important.
I guess, yeah. No, I see where you're coming from on that. In that, a lot of it, well, I mean, episode 1, kind of looking back, was sort of just filler where they're captured twice. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it was to set it all up, but really just a lot of it was banter back and forth between, the sort of witty and sarcastic banter between Vorg and Shurna, and then the banter between the blue guys, which barely had any bearing on the plot, because the banter between the blue guys took up a lot of time, but ultimately it just boiled down to Calic and Orym Calic and Orym helping the Drashigs get out of the machine. Right. I mean, all of this political intrigue went nowhere other than that.
Yeah, it kind of just got wrapped up really quickly just in the final episode. They're like, oh, we're out of time. Wrap up the political intrigue, wrap up everything, and get the Doctor off the planet.
Yeah, by apparently killing Calic and Orym. And then, the convenient, everyone went back to their own time and space.
Well,
the end.
That was convenient, but I don't see it being... I see it as being in line with the Doctor's character. I mean, if he was going to destroy the Miniscope, he was going to try to get them back to their own time one way or another.
Yeah, I guess, and I mean, it would have taken a turn for the dark had they all just died, but... I don't know.
I mean, I think even if they'd all just popped out in that room, the Doctor would have just brought them all into the TARDIS and taken them home, now that he has the control of the TARDIS back.
Yeah, well, as much control as he has over the TARDIS, that is.
As much as he claims to have. He didn't quite get to Metebelis 3. Whether or not he didn't get there intentionally or not is left up to speculation.
Well, no, I think it's pretty clear that he tried to get there but didn't. I mean,
Yeah.
Based on episode 1. But yeah, just overall very throwaway serial in my opinion.
Yeah, pretty much. It's mediocre, but I mean, I think it's...
You gotta fill out season 10 somehow.
I think it's better than like what we got in season 8.
It's on par with that.
Season 8 was the monster season.
It's on par with 7 and some serials from 8.
So, yeah, well, that wraps that up. That episode felt like it went by really quickly.
And not really any characterization at all, except for maybe one point, the one point in episode 3, when they're talking about the zoo with Joe and the Doctor.
Yeah. Oh, well. There you go, another serial on the pile type thing, and we're just moving on.
Another down.
One more to the end. So
another one bites the dust. No.
Check us out on YouTube. Also email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters. Check us out on iTunes and the website at iTunes at Trust Your Doctor, and the website at decorativevegetable.com. Keep an eye out on iTunes and the website because we have a very special collaboration episode that we have done with the wonderful people of Flight Through Entirety. I'll put a link to their website in the description, but that you can find them at flightthroughentirety.com. But basically, they have also been watching Doctor Who from the beginning.
Right. They're a little ahead of us. They're on season 11 as of this recording. And, we did a crossover where we read a third Doctor book, Last of the Gadarene.
And that'll be going out in the coming 2 weeks. We're going for this week. Obviously, you want to get it out as quick as possible, but, sometimes time doesn't really work in your favor, as the Doctor very well knows. But yes, be sure to check them out at flightthroughentirety.com, as, they're on Twitter at FTE Podcast, and, they're around, stuff. They're on Facebook too.
And so are we. Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor, and we have a Twitter now. So, updates will be going on that cool stuff, and, you can find that at TYD Podcast. So, yeah, but next week we are watching Frontier in Space. But until then, the end.